Very rarely in video game history has the gaming community witnessed a game that perfects its genre and innovates the said genre with creativity and originality. For the first-person shooter genre, Half-Life 2 is a prime example of how a game can dually represent the best that the genre has to offer, but also separate itself from similar games with pioneering new intuitive design. Half-Life 2 was developed by the team at Valve Corporation, who are known for classic first-person shooter games such as Counter-Strike, the Left 4 Dead series, and Portal. The game is a direct sequel to the original Half-Life title. There is no literal narrative explaining the gap between Half-Life and Half-Life 2. The backstory is constructed in a way that is up to the player to discover what has happened. This can be accomplished by observing details in the scenery and listening to the NPC's conversations. This element sets it apart from most games itself. Half-Life 2 contains no cutscenes and very few breaks from playing the game itself. All events are viewed in real time through the protagonist's eyes. What is known is that planet Earth has been sieged by alien invaders known as the Combine. Who, how, and why the Combine have took over the planet is up to the player to discover. For the few who are unacquainted with the hero of Half-Life 2, here are a few quick details on Gordon Freeman, the protagonist. Gordon Freeman is an intelligent, theoretical research scientist. Freeman was unintentionally sent on an interdimensional adventure in the original Half-Life game. Gordon Freeman is not your typical first-person shooter character. He is not a space marine, he is not a Black Ops mercenary, nor is he a deadly assassin. Gordon Freeman is just a simple scientist who got caught up in an incident out of his control. Although Gordon Freeman is silent through both Half-Life 1 and 2, other NPCs' conversations and reactions to Freeman mold with the perception of who he is. Fortunately, Gordon Freeman is armed with many resources. Gordon Freeman wears a hazmat suit called the Mark V. The suit can enhance his speed and jumping ability. It can also absorb bullets and other types of damage. The Mark V hazmat power suit is essential to Gordon's adventures. Gordon can also acquire a vast array of weaponry, ranging from pistols, automatic rifles, crossbows, grenades, and rocket launcher. The iconic and instantly recognizable weapons for Gordon are the crowbar and the gravity gun. The gravity gun is a weapon that is capable of attracting inanimate objects, or animate objects, and holding them towards the barrel of the gun until the player decides to A. drop the object, or B. launch the object with extreme force. Within the realistic physics of Half-Life 2, the gravity gun is not only a destructive weapon, but it can also be utilized to solve environmental puzzles. If there is difficulty getting from point A to point B, the gravity gun is most likely the solution to the problem. Gordon will often find himself in firefights with squadrons of soldiers, hordes of alien threats, and perilous platforming obstacles. These tools and resources are the heart of Half-Life 2 to get past these obstacles. Controlling Dr. Freeman and his weaponry is simple and not overcomplicated. Changing weapons is simplified by an easy-to-access menu or a flick of the D-pad. The arrangements of the buttons on the PlayStation 3 controller does not compromise the experience of controlling Freeman at all. I had no problem controlling Gordon, and everything had such an ease and simplicity, this game became like a second nature to me. The game's pacing is another aspect that separates itself from other first-person shooters. There are no such things as missions, there are no breaks in gameplay. The game is one huge adventure that is played out in real time. You witness everything through Gordon Freeman's eyes from the moment you step off the train at the beginning of the game. From one story event to the next, you never leave Gordon's perspective. The game feels like a really exciting and kick-ass road trip. As you make your way out of the city, you will travel in a couple of different ways. Through most of the game you will travel on foot, but there are breaks where you cover long distances in 2 different vehicles. Although the game's progression is linear, the game does an excellent job in tricking the player into thinking that the world around Gordon Freeman and the path he takes to reach the conclusion of his story is everything but linear. Some of the areas are large and expansive, and the game makes the player walk through the world as Gordon Freeman every step of the way. The only issue I had with this concept is that there is no map system, and it can sometimes be confusing on how to advance further. At some point you will have to find a way to open a gate or some other obstacle with no clear-cut instructions on what to do. The game requires exploration, patience, and persistence. Within the world there are many threats to Gordon Freeman. The Combine soldiers, head crab zombies, helicopters, giant bugs, and many other terrible things inhabit the world. How you engage these enemies is up to the player. You can attack them with guns blazing, or you can utilize the gravity gun and use the environment against them, or you can just run like hell. At certain points in the game I found myself without the ammunition nor the surroundings needed to fight off the attackers, so I simply had Gordon run for his life. Given the platforming elements mixed with the thrill of the chase, there were some moments where I felt exhausted from the experience. The graphics in the PS3 version are excellent. I seldom witnessed any drop in the frame rate, even when I would chain multiple explosions or if I had multiple enemies and NPCs on the screen. Near the end of the game, there is a moment where you lead a squadron into a full-scale rebellion against the Combine oppressors. Even with a full 4-man squad going up against 5 or 6 Combine soldiers, there never seem to be any lag issues or screen tears. The environments range everywhere from urban city structures, long stretches of coastal scenery, and even a deep cavernous abyss. The gaming ambiance is constantly changing, keeping the pacing upbeat and consistently fresh. The sound effects are amazing. The guns, grenades, and other weapons have lots of pop, and they sound crystal clear. Even when something is happening in the distance, you can still slightly hear it as if it was something happening a kilometer away. Each enemy makes distinctive grunts, yells, and screams. The muffled banter coming from the Combine soldiers as they engage you will always be such an iconic memory for me. Even more so when you unload a shotgun round into their chest and hear them scream. In my opinion, the soundtrack is less memorable, but for good reason. It doesn't get in the way of the game. It is all ambient music that fits the mood of the experience. There is no overbearing heavy metal or house music blaring as you progress in the game. There is no epic orchestra over-dramatizing the scene. The music is perfect, and it blends so well it sometimes goes unnoticed during play. Overall, the PS3 port of Half-Life 2 is a flawless masterpiece. I have never played the PC version of the game. My only experience with Half-Life 2 is the original Xbox version. The Xbox version was good, but the PS3 Orange Box version is great. I would highly recommend this version to all PS3 owners. The Orange Box is about 3 years old, so you could probably find this game for less than $20. My advice is to play this game if you haven't. And if you have, you should probably play it again.